Come closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. The farmhouse remembered sounds the way an old dog remembers footsteps. It shifted at her entry, bored settling into a familiar ache, the air taking on the faint sweetness of mouse nests and last year's apples long since turned to paper. Calla paused in the threshold and let her eyes adjust. Dust motes floated in the long bar of evening light like slow, tired snow. She had promised herself this would be quick. In, photograph the rooms for the realtor. Out, leave the rest to boxes and a man with a truck who didn't know her grandmother's laugh or the way the porch used to hum when summer storms rolled over the fields. But the place had a way of swallowing our hands. Calla set her backpack on the entry table and heard the table complain, an old, splintered sigh. The house kept its smells close, linseed oil, old wool, the faint metallic tang of the well water that never fully left the pipes, wallpaper peeled in long curls from the hallway in pale florals, the exact shade of a bruise as it heals. Her phone blinked to life in her palm. There was no service, of course there wasn't, only the inert glow of the camera app. She took the first picture, then another. The lens made the hallway look narrower, like the walls were leaning in to listen. The mirror stood halfway up the stairs, taller than she remembered, or maybe she was smaller then. Its frame was carved from dark wood in a reckless tangle. Vines, leaves, little fists of fruit, all smoothed by years of careful hands. The glass had clouded in places, silvering eaten away like frost, licked by tongues. When they'd visit as a kid, her grandmother used to throw a sheet over it before bedtime. "So my dreams don't see themselves," she'd say, half a joke. Calla had laughed then, she didn't laugh now. She moved past it once, carrying the light with her. The second-floor landing opened into the 3 bedrooms that used to smell of cedar and mothballs. Sun burned low through the west windows, a slow orange bleeding over bed frames and the trunk where quilts slept. There were photographs propped on dressers, but their faces had slid into sepia generalities. She didn't know these people anymore. Maybe she never had. It wasn't the photographs that made her turn back. It was the small, precise feeling that something had looked at her from behind, not the house, not the air. A gaze, level with her own, it threaded beneath her ribs and tugged once, easy as a child testing the strength of a string. Calla retraced her steps until she stood before the mirror on the landing. Up close, the glass wasn't just tarnished, it was warped the way a puddle warps the sky, truth made to ripple and bend. Her reflection gathered itself from that warping a beat too late. There she was, same freckle at the point of her chin, same hair scraped into a loose knot that would fall apart at the slightest breeze. The same old hoodie she always wore for sad chores. She raised her phone to frame a photograph of the landing and herself in the glass in the hallway beyond, a neat recursive trick. Her reflection raised its phone. The shutter clicked in the quiet. The echo of that click stretched. It thinned. She waited for the twin click from the glass, some silly expectation of sound returning to her like the end of a canyon shout. There was no sound, just the old house breathing. She lowered her phone. The reflection did too, a fraction slower, not delay exactly. Delay with intent. A draft climbed the stairwell and touched the back of her neck, cool and damp and a little too intimate. The mirror's surface filmed with a faint breath haze that wasn't hers. "Okay," she said to the empty landing, the word landing soft. "Nope." She meant it as a joke to herself. The house took it like a confession. Calla leaned forward until her own face was close enough to count the pores the glass would not show her. The smear on the surface looked like something pressed a palm there long ago, and the oil had never fully left. 5 ovals and a crescent of heel. She set her hand to it to measure and immediately pulled back. The glass was cold in the way water is cold when your wrist slips beneath and your bones feel rinsed. She tilted her head to the left. The woman in the mirror matched her. She tilted right, matched. Calla narrowed one eye. The woman smiled. It was so small a smile that if Calla had wanted to forgive it, she could have called it a trick of light. But Calla didn't forgive it, and the smile knew it. It widened by a molecule and showed the edge of a tooth as if to say, "There you are." Her throat did the useless swallow of someone drinking air. She stepped back until her heel found the edge of the stair, and she had to pinwheel one hand to keep balance. The movement broke the held breath of the landing. Boards eased. Somewhere in the kitchen, a pipe ticked as if cooling after a long, slow boil. "Get a grip," she told herself, using the practical voice that once got her through a blizzard. Old mirror, old eyes, pareidolia. The word sounded like a saint's name and did not help. She set her camera to video and lifted it again. This was proof, or it was nothing. The frame held the mirror square, the hallway to her left, the long runner rug tattered to strings, her face, her shoulders, the carved frame's shadow on the wallpaper like a forest crowding a single road. She forced herself to breathe normally, slow and steady. Her chest rose. Her reflection's chest rose. She released. The woman released. She kept her face still as a mask. The woman in the mirror let her mouth soften, then curl. "Caught you," Calla whispered, and the whisper seemed too warm in the cool house. She pressed stop, thumb fumbling the screen. The phone thought about it. The video thumbnail began to spin. Her hand shook, and that made it worse, the thumbnail shimmering and refusing to show her anything. And then it did, and in the tiny rectangle she saw her own stillness and the reflection's movement, an almost smile that was an almost wave, and she stopped breathing again. There was a thing with terror that she had learned in the smallest hours of the ugliest nights. If you hold perfectly still, terror believes you are furniture. If you move too quickly, terror thinks you've accepted its invitation. The trick is a careful, neutral step, a nod to terror's existence without feeding it. Calla lowered the phone, neutral, her hoodie pulled where her shoulder tensed. "I see you," she said, and felt ridiculous and felt better for saying it. The mirror's surface seemed to gather a sheen, as though the glass were a skin after a run. She had the sick, sudden sense of something leaning forward on the other side, close enough that if there were breath there, it would fog. "Why did she cover you?" The question came out before she decided to ask it. She waited for the sound of her own voice to embarrass her. It didn't. The house considered her question and did not answer. Evening slipped lower, and something of the light changed from warmth to the kind of dim that makes corners hungry. Calla's grandmother's quilt trunk looked heavier now. The carved fruit on the mirror frame looked more like old hearts. The air had cooled a degree or 2, maybe 3. She could leave. She could go back down the stairs and out the front door with its heavy brass plate, and her car would start the first time the way it always did. The road to town would unspool through the harvested fields, hay bales squared up like little houses in neat rows. She could be stubborn about rationality and leave fear to others. She tried that thought on. the way she'd slip on a coat to see if it still fit. It pinched at the shoulders. Calla took one more step toward the mirror. The frame filled her periphery, the vines black with their own shadow. Her reflection held her gaze without blinking. Something like a pulse moved beneath the silvering, a slow throb, and she knew it had to be an illusion, her own heartbeat vibrating through metacarpals pressed to wood, some nonsense like that. Trade me, the thought arrived. Not a voice, not an actual sound. A message that came pre-translated into a sentence her mind could hold. It startled her so badly she almost laughed. The mirror had become a Rorschach. She was making words where none existed. But the thought had a second clause, quieter. You're tired, I'm not. She stepped back again because the floor creaked in the particular way floors creak when weight is about to shift, and she didn't trust her ankles. The mirror stayed where it was. Her reflection did not follow. For the first time since she was small, the house felt taller than her. A single kernel of wind fell through the upstairs window that never fully latched and ran its finger along the hallway runner. The fringe lifted, trembled, settled. Calla's eyes tracked the movement, grateful for something ordinary. When she looked back, her reflection had her head tilted, studying her with a curiosity Calla recognized from every stray cat she'd ever coaxed to a saucer. A shadow crossed the glass behind the reflected Calla, quick, thin, a person-shaped suggestion disappearing through a room that wasn't one of hers. The pressure came back under the ribs, that tug on the string. She told herself not to turn around. She turned around. The landing was emptier than a held plate. The bedrooms waited with their neat, patient beds. Her breath was the only small sound, out and back, out and back. She turned to the mirror again. In the reflection, the hallway behind her was deeper, longer, the runner stretching into a vanishing point that did not exist in her world. The wallpaper's flowers were not flowers at all, but the careful repeat of curling mouths. Her reflected face was very calm, too calm, the kind of calm you put on to keep a frightened child from realizing there is something to fear. The thought re-arrived, not a demand, not yet, a suggestion offered like a warm bath. I can do it for you. I can carry what you don't want to carry. Her mouth went dry. The word no gathered at the back of her tongue, pebbled and unhelpful. Somewhere downstairs, the old kitchen clock did not tick. She knew it didn't tick. It hadn't worked in years, and still she heard it. A single talk, polite as a knuckle on a door. She spoke to make the inside of her head less loud. You don't get to decide what I want. It was the wrong sentence to say aloud. She felt it as soon as she said it, like stepping down onto the first rotten stair and feeling wood become sponge beneath your heel. The reflection's almost smile softened in sympathy, as if to say, then decide, sweetheart. The light finally gave up its last honest orange and slid into a flat, tepid gray. Calla's phone screen woke again when her thumb brushed it. 7:16. She had promised herself she'd be out by 6. There was a line between courage and courting something, and she did not want to discover she had crossed it when there was no line left to see. She yanked her gaze away, not quick, not slow, the practiced neutral of someone refusing a dare. She went down the stairs with her hand skimming the banister, careful of the splinter that had lived there since she was 10. The mirror remained in the corner of her eye like a patient stranger at the end of a bar. She didn't look at it. She thought of water, of locks, of doors that close with weight and a click. At the bottom of the stairs, in the foyer that always smelled faintly of wet wool no matter the season, Calla did look back once. Only once. The glass at the landing held the whole hallway like a held breath. Her reflection stood at the top of the stairs. It did not follow. It did not wave. It only lifted its chin the smallest amount, as if bracing for something, or promising it was very, very good at waiting. Calla put her hand on the front doorknob. The metal was colder than it should have been. The house listened for her decision. She turned the knob, and the latch unhooked its old jaw with a noise like a hush. Outside, the fields had gone blue. A single moth battered itself against the porch light. Somewhere across the road, a late tractor coughed. She stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind her. The click of the latch was too quiet to be relief. She walked to the car. The rearview mirror caught her face and gave it back without commentary. She let out the breath she hadn't realized she'd been rationing. On the second story, behind the unlatched window, the sheet her grandmother used to drape over the upstairs mirror lay folded in a cedar chest. The house knew it. The mirror knew it. Calla did not. Yet. The house didn't like silence. Even when Calla sat perfectly still, it filled the air with tiny, persistent sounds. The wheeze of floorboards under their own weight, the slow tick of cooling pipes, the gentle scratch of wind teasing loose shingles. She had come back the next evening. That was the mistake she promised herself she wouldn't make, and yet here she was, her car parked at the edge of the lane, her backpack slung tight on her shoulders. One more night, she told the fields as if they were a jury. One more, and that's it. The farmhouse didn't greet her, it received her. She carried a lantern this time, an old hurricane lamp she found in the garage, because her phone's beam felt too fragile. Its amber glow slid over the walls like honey, softening the bruised wallpaper. When she reached the upstairs landing, the mirror waited, exactly where she left it, tall and still and unsheeted. Her reflection stared back, ordinary now, just a tired girl with shadows under her eyes, a ponytail, a backpack strap cutting into her shoulder. But when she shifted the lantern, she heard it, faint, feathered, like breath snagging in glass. "Hello," Calla whispered, because that's what you do in houses that listen. At first, nothing. Then, words. Not loud, not clear. A whisper pressed so thin she thought it must have risen from her own head, yet the mirror carried it, vibrating like water over stone. "I can help you." Calla's chest went tight. She stepped back, lantern trembling, flame quivering behind the glass. "No," she said too sharply, too fast. Her own voice bounced back, cracked and nervous. The reflection's lips did not move, but the whisper came again, smoother, almost sweet. "You're tired. Let me carry it." Her grandmother's warning rose uninvited. "Cover it before bed so my dreams don't see themselves." Calla felt the words sink deeper now, like her grandmother hadn't been joking at all. She forced her eyes down, away from her own face, in the mirror. The floorboards beneath her socks were cold. She tried counting her breaths, 4 in, 6 out, but each exhale sounded like another's. When she dared look up again, the reflection smiled. Not wide, not grotesque, just tender. A smile like an old friend might give, one who knew every crack in her armor. Calla's throat burned. She turned from the mirror and nearly fled down the hall, but her lantern caught the edge of something on the glass. She froze. Handprints. Fresh ones smudged across the inside surface, palms pressed flat as if begging to be let through. Her heart hammered so hard she thought the glass itself might rattle. Calla's lantern flickered as if it too had heard the words. She took a step back from the mirror, but the glass seemed to lean toward her, greedy for the sound of her breath. "Not real," she muttered, gripping the lantern handle tighter. "Just a trick of my head." Her reflection tilted its head in agreement, only a half-beat late, and when Calla blinked, she swore she saw her reflection's lips still curved in that faint smile, while her own face was set hard, jaw locked. The whisper came again, louder now, threaded with something warm. "I can be stronger, I can be softer, I can be better than you." Her scalp prickled. She wanted to turn and run, but some deeper thread inside her held her still, tethered to the glass. It wasn't just curiosity, it was recognition. The words echoed the same way her own doubts did on sleepless nights. Her lantern flame flared as if fed by an unseen breath, and in that moment she heard more. Voices tangled together beneath her own, childlike laughter, the sigh of a woman she didn't recognize, a man's low murmur, all of them curling together into a single familiar timbre. Her timbre. "I've been waiting for you to listen." Calla's pulse roared in her ears. She glanced down at the phone clutched in her other hand. Black screen, lifeless, no recording this time, no proof. She raised her gaze back to the mirror and froze. Her reflection wasn't holding the lantern anymore. The girl in the glass cradled nothing but her empty hands, as if the lantern's glow were her own. Her eyes burned brighter, alive in a way Calla's didn't feel. She looked rested, content. Calla stumbled back until her shoulders brushed the peeling wallpaper. The air smelled faintly of iron, like old blood under rust. "Stop it," she whispered, voice breaking. "You're not me." The reflection's lips finally moved, slowly, carefully, as if tasting the words before giving them shape. "Not yet." By the third night, Calla promised herself she wouldn't look at it. She told herself she'd go upstairs, finish boxing the books and sweaters, and leave before the dark reached its fingers through the windows. She swore it. But promises meant nothing in this house. The mirror was patient. The mirror knew she would come. It began before she even reached the landing, a drag beneath her ribs, the sense of a weight settling in her lungs. Not suffocation exactly, just heaviness, the quiet pull of gravity bending her steps toward the glass. The lantern's glow kissed the warped surface. Her reflection was waiting. She looked worse tonight, pale, hollow-eyed, her hair a little stringier, shoulders sagging more than she remembered, a sleepless version of herself she didn't recognize, until she realized it was her, only stripped of the small courage she'd tried to carry. The reflection, though. The girl in the mirror stood straighter. Her skin gleamed faintly, as though warmed by a fire Calla couldn't feel. Her smile was quiet, sure, the kind you wear when you know you've already won. Calla's stomach churned. She dragged her gaze away, forcing herself to the bedroom across the hall. She shoved sweaters into a box, her hands trembling, and tried humming to fill the air. The sound didn't last. It faltered, slipping into silence that the mirror seemed to drink from the hallway. When she returned to the landing, her reflection didn't just look alive, it moved first. The girl shifted her weight, brushing imaginary dust from her jeans. Her eyes sparked with something eager. "Stop it," Calla muttered, shaking her head hard. "You don't get to." Her voice cut off. The reflection had raised its hand, slow and deliberate, palm out, as though pressing against the inside of the glass. Calla's breath caught when she realized the handprint matched the smudge she had seen before. And then her reflection laughed. Silent, just the shape of a laugh tugging at lips and throat. But Calla heard it anyway, as though the sound had been poured directly into her ears. Her knees went weak. The box in her arms slid from her grip, sweater spilling across the floor. The whisper returned, close enough to taste. "You're already fading. Let me live for you." Her pulse stuttered. She stumbled back against the wall, shaking her head. "No," she croaked, though her voice was thin. The reflection tilted her head, pitying. "Why not?" And for the first time, Calla felt it, an almost physical tug. Her chest pressed toward the mirror as though invisible strings had hooked into her bones, pulling her gently, tenderly, like a lover drawing her closer. Her lantern flickered, the glass rippled. Calla's own lips trembled. And to her horror, she felt the shape of a smile she hadn't made. Sleep had become impossible. Calla lay curled on the narrow bed in her grandmother's old room, but the mirror's pull seeped through walls and floorboards. Even with the door shut, she swore she could feel its gaze pressing against her skin like cool fingertips. By the time dawn bled gray across the window, she gave up. She rose, lantern unlit in her hand, and stepped barefoot into the hallway. The mirror was waiting as if it had never known night. Her reflection looked perfect, awake, rested. Her hair fell neat, her skin warm, her eyes bright with a steadiness Calla hadn't felt in weeks. She wanted to hate it, but some fragile piece of her ached with longing instead. She leaned closer, and that was when she saw it. Behind her reflection, past the gleam of glass, the hallway stretched on, longer than it should. Shadows lay heavy, like liquid pooled at the edges. The wallpaper wasn't bruised florals anymore, but peeling black, curling away from wood the color of dried bone. And then she saw herself. Not the reflection, herself. Calla, pale and frantic, pounding fists against the inside of the mirror. Her mouth opened in a scream she couldn't hear, hands slamming the glass with desperate rhythm. Her knees weakened. She staggered back, one hand pressed hard to her chest. The reflection didn't falter. That bright, alive girl stayed steady, calm, smiling as though she hadn't heard a thing. "No," Calla whispered. "That's not..." The mirrored Calla pressed her palm flat against the glass again, but this time the surface rippled, a faint shimmer, like water kissed by wind. The girl trapped inside pounded harder, eyes wide with terror. Calla felt the vibration rattle through her teeth. Though no sound reached her ears, she stumbled forward instinctively, her hand hovering above the warped surface. The reflection leaned in. Lips moved slowly, shaping a word Calla couldn't mistake. "Trade." Calla snatched her hand back. "No." The word rang sharp in the hollow house. For the first time, the reflection frowned, as if disappointed. But behind her, the trapped Calla only beat harder against the glass, face contorting with silent screams that looked more and more like her own nightmares come alive. She dropped to her knees, clutching her head. She couldn't tell which one was real anymore. The bright, steady Calla on the outside, or the frantic, desperate Calla trapped inside. The mirror throbbed once, a deep pulse that made the lantern flicker even unlit, and Calla finally realized the truth. The mirror wasn't showing her possibility. It was showing her replacement. Calla hadn't realized she'd fallen asleep at the kitchen table until the sharp creak of the floor woke her. The farmhouse was dark again, her lantern burned down to a stub of light. She rubbed her eyes and tried to shake the weight pressing on her chest. The sound came again, upstairs, the boards groaning, not with settling age, but with footsteps. Her pulse stuttered. She knew she should leave, grab her keys, drive into town, never look back. But something deeper, something already knotted in her bones, urged her up the stairs. The landing was darker than before, the air thick, as if the house itself held its breath. The mirror glowed faintly, though no light touched it. Her reflection waited, brighter than ever, hair smooth, cheeks flushed with color, eyes wide and certain. She looked alive. Calla's lips parted, but no words came. She was too tired to fight. That was when the reflection moved first. She leaned close to the glass, her expression soft, kind even, her lips pressed into words. I can take it from you. Calla shook her head weakly. Take what? The whisper threaded out of the glass, cool as breath against her ear. The weight, the ache, the nights you can't sleep. Let me carry it. You'll wake light, free. You'll never hurt again. The trapped Calla she had seen before was gone now. Only this girl remained, so perfect, so steady. Her hand rose without her permission, hovering inches from the glass. The air there was colder than stone. Her reflection pressed her palm flat to the inside, waiting, patient, almost pleading. Calla's breath fogged the mirror, hers alone. She whispered, "What happens to me?" The reflection's smile deepened, and for the first time her lips moved in perfect sync with Calla's own voice. You'll finally rest. The glass rippled, a faint, wet shimmer spread outward from where the reflection's hand pressed. The barrier was thinner now, a skin waiting to be pierced. Calla's chest ached with longing and terror both. The thought slid into her mind as if it had always been there. One touch, and it would be over. One touch, and the bargain would be struck. The farmhouse clock had been broken for years, yet Calla heard it ticking, slow, patient, counting down. She stood before the mirror, her hand trembling inches from the glass. The reflection's palm waited on the other side, steady and sure. Her chest rose and fell in jagged pulls. Every rational thought screamed to run, but exhaustion pressed heavier. It whispered that maybe this was mercy, that maybe the mirror was right. The surface shivered like water under rain. Her reflection's smile widened. Just touch, the whisper cooed. I'll do the rest. Calla closed her eyes, just for a second, but in the dark she felt it more than ever. The pull, invisible hooks snagging her ribs, drawing her forward. She opened her eyes. The reflection wasn't waiting anymore. She was moving. Her reflection's hand pushed through the surface as if it were wet paper. Fingers pale as bone, dripping with cold sheen, reaching into Calla's world. Calla stumbled back with a gasp. The lantern tipped, flame flaring high before sputtering to smoke. Shadows devoured the landing. The hand groped blindly, searching. Its wet fingers brushed her sleeve, icy enough to burn. She cried out, shaking her arm free, but the hand only reached further, elbow now sliding from the glass, followed by a shoulder, then a dark crown of hair slick with silver. The mirror's girl was coming through. Calla clutched the wall, heart hammering. No, you can't. Her own voice cut sharp, but another voice answered in the exact same timbre, spilling from the reflection's mouth. I already am. The figure dragged itself half free, dripping as though born from liquid mercury. Its eyes were Calla's, but brighter, crueler, certain. She turned to flee, but the hallway stretched impossibly long, the runner carpet unraveling into blackness. No doors, no escape, only the mirror behind her, spilling her better self into the world. Her knees buckled, the cold weight pressed against her chest, tugging her forward. A promise, a demand. Rest, let me live. And for the first time, Calla's lips shaped the word back. Unspoken, but there all the same. Yes. The hand seized hers, the glass yawned open. The cold swallowed Calla whole. Her body lurched forward as if gravity itself had chosen a side. Her fingers, clamped in that slick, mercurial grip, were tugged through the glass. For a heartbeat, she felt the skin of the mirror pass over her knuckles, cold, wet, endless, and then her arm, her shoulder, her chest. She gasped as her reflection's warmth pressed against her, a drowning embrace. Her scream rattled only inside her skull, no sound passed her lips. And then, silence. When her eyes opened, she was staring out from behind the glass. The world beyond was muffled, blurred, as though viewed through water. Her reflection, no, her replacement, stood where she had been, brushing her damp hair back, straightening the sleeve of her hoodie. The movements were calm, ordinary, a girl tidying herself. Calla pounded her fists against the inside of the glass, desperate, frantic. But not a sound passed through. The girl outside didn't even flinch. Instead, she bent and picked up the fallen lantern, striking the match with steady hands. Flame bloomed. She held it high, gazing into the mirror one last time. Her eyes met Calla's. And she smiled. The lantern's glow made her features alive, almost radiant. She turned her back on the mirror and walked down the stairs, each step measured, confident, free. Calla screamed, clawed, begged, but all the mirror gave her was her own panicked face, distorted by silver, framed in the curling vines of the wood. The house listened to her thrashing and said nothing. 2 days later, Calla's brother arrived. He stepped inside, shaking the autumn rain from his jacket, muttering about his sister not answering her phone. "Calla," he called. Footsteps patted down from upstairs. She appeared on the landing, lantern in hand, smiling with calm he'd never seen on her before. "Hey," she said, her voice light. "I'm fine. Really, I'm better." Relief flooded him. He didn't see the faint ripple in the hallway mirror behind her, where a pale, frantic figure slammed her hands against the inside of the glass. They say mirrors are only glass, silver pressed against sand, nothing more. But what if they aren't? What if every reflection you've ever stared into isn't copying you, but studying you? What if, just beyond the surface, there's something patient and hungry, waiting for the one moment you're too tired to fight back? Calla thought she was looking into her own face. In truth, she was meeting her replacement, And maybe, just maybe, the next time you pass a mirror in the hallway late at night, the version looking back isn't quite your own. So I'll leave you with one last thought. Don't look too long. Don't lean too close. And whatever you do, never ever smile first.